Welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, I'm going to cover what I do when I'm prepping loan documents for an appointment. So hopefully you can snag some tips to help improve your efficiency and reduce your closing time while increasing your customer satisfaction. Now, if you're brand new to the channel and this is the first time you stumbled on us, glad to have you. We have a ton of great content for notary signing agents anywhere along the journey, beginner, intermediate, expert, advanced, starting a signing service. It doesn't matter. We've got content for everyone. So if it's something that's interesting to you, feel free to subscribe, like, and share this video if you think it will be helpful. Now, if you're kind of intermediate advanced, you may be able to skip this video, but if you're on the beginner to intermediate side, this should definitely save you some time at the closings to give you perspective on why I prep documents a certain way in order to get ready for the appointments. Now, full disclosure, this is a buyer signing for a appointment that is occurring on my signing service today, later on out of state. I printed it out. I have not looked at this ahead of time. I know it is a buyer signing for one of our clients, and it's probably about 135 pages, which includes title documents and loan documents. The title documents are probably about 20 some pages, 25 pages, and the lender documents are about 115. So 110. So we'll go through that together. And let's get started. So the first page is just a notary guidelines. What should you be doing as a notary? How to print documents. That requires that you sign that. So obviously I'm going to sign that so I don't have to bother with it later. Now the title documents are first and the lender documents are second. So normally at an appointment with the buyer, I'm going to go over certain key documents at the beginning, which is usually the settlement statement, which I'm seeing right here, and the closing disclosure right after that. And then the rest of the title documents, and then the rest of the loan documents. And the reason I do that in that order is because all the numbers have to make sense. And if there's going to be any red flags, it's typically with the numbers, and that's where most of the questions stem from. So that's why I'm starting with the settlement statement, followed by the closing disclosure. Now the settlement statement, I'm going to go through line by line with the buyer, just like I do with the buyers and sellers, unless they have extreme confidence, they've reviewed it, they're good to go, they're very experienced, then I won't. But if they're not, they're first timers, I definitely want to go through it to deliver a better experience. Now, I'm not going to go through this right now because I have a separate video, which I'll link right here, about how to review an ALTA with a buyer or seller. I cover both in that video, so check that out for more details and the common questions that come up. But I have my ALTA here. I like that on top. Perfect. I'm not going to sign as a settlement agent. The title company will do that. This will just be for my one single buyer, and today's date, which is the 18th, is the day I'm filming this, April 18th, 2024. The deed is in here. Now, this title company likes to include the deed for their buyer. So what I'm going to do is actually just literally set that aside. Now, in this case, this deed, the buyer is not required to sign. So I'm actually going to set this aside to include with the buyer's documents. So I will have to print a second copy for the buyer. And actually, since it's already going to include the deed, I'll just leave that there because they're already going to get a copy of it when I print them their second set. And the second set of documents for the buyer, I'm literally going to either binder clip or rubber band, depending on how many pages it is, or if I have a binder clip big enough, and then use this legal size manila envelope, put it in there, close it, and you can write on there, buyer documents or whatever for this property. And that way, when I get to the closing, I can hand that to them, say, hey, this is your copy. We're going to go through everything together, but that's your hard copy. The title company will probably email you a digital copy signed as well in whatever portal that they use. So moving on. So we have a couple Maryland specific documents, but since they're a first-time Maryland home buyer, in our state, we give them a discount on state transfer tax. So they have to sign an affidavit saying and swearing that they are a first-time Maryland home buyer. So in this one, literally just says dated this blank day of April. So that would be the 18th day of April. And then the notary block is at the bottom, state of Maryland, county of Hartford. I hereby certify on this 18th day of blank April 2024 before me, Notary Public, personally appeared, blank line. That would be my buyer. And then I'm going to put my commission expires. I'm going to write that on there. So I'm going to prep my certificate, everything except the signature and stamp, because in my state, and I believe in most states, that has to occur actually at the time of notarization, but everything else is prepped so that when I give this to the buyer, they sign it. I'm actually going to witness it in this case because I'm in a state that I am allowed to witness, which is most states. I'm printing my name underneath the witness line, so I don't have to do that later. So they'll sign it, they'll hand it back to me. I'll verify the signature. I'll sign as a witness. I'll sign and stamp. and then go to the next document. That way I'm ready to go. Homestead tax credit form. This is a Maryland thing where people get breaks on property taxes they're paying if that's their primary residence. Again, I'm going to let them know about this and let them know they have a copy in their set to fill out and mail in. And I'll go over that with the buyer at the table. Owner occupancy affidavit, same deal. It's a local Maryland county thing. So this particular county just says that they will give them a small break on property taxes at the time of sale if they swear that they're going to live in the property. So I'm just going to make sure that my state certificate is right. State of Maryland, County of Hartford. I have to change these. So I have to line through. They had the wrong state and the wrong county. Initial where I corrected it. And then fill out my notary certificate at the bottom. All right. Old Republic statutory. Okay, this one's just confirming that yes, they are getting title insurance. In this case, they're getting the homeowner's full enhanced title insurance policy along with the lender's policy since they get a mortgage. So all I'm doing is circling that option because I know that's what they're getting based on the ALTA and the numbers are already filled in here. And then when I'm presenting it at the table, I'm just letting them know, yes, you're getting title insurance. Is just confirming you're getting it. We already know that's on there. They're signing and dating on the next page. Now, as I'm going through this, you'll note I'm not putting stickers, sign here stickers or date here stickers. I absolutely did that on my very first appointment, and you can do it for sure at the beginning, just as guardrails to make sure that you're not going to make that mistake. Perfectly fine. For me personally, what worked after I did that, I realized it took a lot of time to do it. Took a lot of time to take them off before I shipped them back. So I just really decided to focus on getting super familiar with the documents, reading every single one so that I knew exactly where they needed to sign a date and just kind of built my skills from there. But you can definitely use stickers for sure. I personally don't, not since my first one. I tried it, not for me. Privacy policy from Old Republic. There's no actual signature spot here. However, most title companies will prefer that you have a privacy policy be initial, whether it's a lender or title document. Usually there's privacy policy. So all I'm doing is writing initials and a line and then having them initial this privacy policy about how Old Republic Title doesn't share their information with other people. Verification of identity. So this is kind of like the title company's version of the Patriot Act form. At the bottom, it'll say verified by me because I'm the notary at the closing with today's date. And then I would plug in their names, driver's license, etc. Settlement agreement and disclosure just says that they have received a copy of the settlement statement. They've reviewed it. They are aware of all the closing costs involved. And then signature, in this case, is on this last page here for the buyer. Name affidavit, we'll see one later in the lender documents. Sometimes title will have that. Again, they are signing and I'm notarizing my certificate, I am filling out my certificate block at the bottom, State of Maryland, County of Hartford, this 18th day of April, and then my commission expiration date. That way I'm good to go. That is a legal description of the property, goes right behind the deed. That's not anything that our buyer has to worry about. So that's it for the title documents. Now, if I had a FedEx label or UPS label, I would have that right here on the top. And I've seen some good notes from other trainers on, if you're doing a lot of closings and you have the FedEx or UPS label, somewhere you can make a note on there or on the back of the FedEx label, buyer signing for Mr. Smith, scans required, etc. So that way you're more organized in the car. You got to know if you need to do scans, you can remind yourself by having that little note. And then you could also, when you're at the FedEx or UPS store and you have more than one package, so you don't mix the FedEx labels up, you've got the name of the buyer right on that label. So it's harder to screw that up. But if you do that, that's a terrible, terrible fire you've just created, because then you've screwed up two transactions, which is incredibly frustrating. Next are the loan documents, which again, as I mentioned, are the bulk of the documents. Now, even though there's 120 pages, 115 pages, whatever it is, a lot of this is not going to be signed by the signer, the buyer in this case, or need to be read by the buyer because it doesn't apply to them at all. So in the lender documents, you're typically going to see closing instructions to the title company, and it will say closing instructions generally, and that will be anywhere between 3 pages to 50 pages in some cases, depending on the lender. If those are instructions only for title, not for the buyer, just about how to complete the transaction after the buyer signed, what to fax, when to fax it, etc., where to fax it, all that other stuff. I can either paperclip. I've seen some people paperclip those instructions so they know not to do that. That's one smart way to do it. Another way to do it would be to take those instructions and put them in the back. Either way, whatever works for you. Now, if you do move things around, you do ideally want to put them back in the order you got them. So in this case, if you want to keep it clean, your easiest bet is probably just to put paper clips right here at the very top of your closing instructions, so you know that you don't have to. In this case, these closing instructions from the lender, they're only 3 pages. The lender involved is Citizens Bank, and the only signature spot is for the title company at the very end. So I can skip that. Closing disclosure is next. Now, in this case, I definitely do want to move this to the front of the line just below the FedEx label and the Alta settlement statement. And all I do when I'm at the table with the buyer, after I've gone through everything line by line, etc. Yes, buyer, you have cash to close, $23,004.36. Did you already wire that in? And 99% of the time they say yes. If not, they say no, but I have a check for you. And I verify the check, the amount is right, and it's a certified check, and it's made out to the title company, it's not misspelled. And make sure they get their receipt for it. And then on the closing disclosure, right after that, I have the cash to close at the bottom, and I'm just saying, yes, yep, the closing disclosure, this is all the same closing costs we just saw a second ago. We went through it. See, the cash to close is the same. And then on the closing disclosure, I'll just confirm the high-level stuff. Yep, that's our loan, that's our interest rate. That's our monthly payment, includes the escrow account. But I don't go detailed on page 2 with all the closing costs because I just reviewed that on the prior document, the settlement statement. But on a buyer transaction, I prefer to go Alta and then closing disclosure. That way I can go over all the details I like to go through at a closing. And I cover a ton of stuff, including owner's title insurance, when are they getting the deed, property taxes, homestead tax credit forms, all that good stuff. I cover all that in detail. And again, watch that Alta video I linked earlier to get those notes. Next is the note. And this is just obviously the IOU document to the borrowers. On the note, just a note on the note, sorry for the puns. Typically this document, most of the time, probably 90+% of the time, will not need a date on it, and the lender will not want a date on it. So if you're using stickers, you can put do not date right here. But generally, because the buyer or the signers are already in the habit of signing and dating their name at this point, because they've already signed 20 documents, before I physically put it in front of them and they can start blindly signing on autopilot, I let them know, hey, here's your note. And before I get to the signature page, I'm covering, the loan amount's $405, that's the same. The interest rate, 6.375, first payment June 1st, like we talked about, for the 30 years. And then the principal and interest is right here, the same thing that we saw on the closing disclosure. And sometimes they'll ask, why is it different than my monthly payment? Because this is just a principal and interest to the bank. The monthly payment is higher because it also includes your escrow account money to pay your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance. There's no prepayment penalty. You always have until the 15th of the month, that grace period, to make that first payment. After the 15th, you'll be hit with a late fee of, in this case, 5%. And then you won't be credit late until 30 days late. And then on the last page, please sign here, no date on this one. Most of them will have a date, not this one, no date. So I say it multiple times and then I'm also watching them as they sign. And some people will still sign and about to put the date, and I'm like, nope, no date. So just be aware of that. They will want to date that because they're in autopilot. And it's just your creatures of habit. Next, addendum to the note. Again, this is just their signature, no date. I would give them the no date spiel. Deed of trust, this is 23 pages. And as far as how I'm presenting it, here you go, Mr. Buyer. This is your deed of trust. This is just saying that there is a loan against the property. It makes the lender feel happy that it's public record. Only 2 things I'm checking to make sure your name matches correctly, which it is here. And then the loan amount is still the same, the $405,000 for the 30 years. Perfect. The rest is the same, the usual 25 paragraphs that we see in all of our Maryland deed of trusts. Please sign right here. Now, this lender doesn't like a date, but usually on the mortgage or deed of trust, you are going to have to put the date because it typically is going to match page 1, but in this case, just sign here, no date, Mr. Borrower. Perfect. And then on the next page is my acknowledgement of that signing. So again, I'm going to prep this: State of Maryland, County of Hartford. Record was acknowledged before me on today's date, 4/18/2024, by the borrower's name. Now, if you're writing in this case it's pre-printed, but if I'm writing in the borrower's name, make sure you're not abbreviating. If it's 2 borrowers, don't put Mr. and Mrs. Last name borrower. You want to put John Smith and Jane Smith as an example, not John and Jane Smith, both of their names. If they're a junior or senior or the 3rd or the 4th, you want to include that as well. Make sure you have all that. You're not omitting any of that, because that will cause a rejection at the county's office, because that what you're putting in the certificate doesn't match the document as far as what their name is. So make sure it's their full name. As you see it on the document, you're pointing that right in your acknowledgement. So acknowledged before me on today's date by Mr. Borrower, first and last name. Printing my name. My commission expires. This notarial act was completed in person. And everything is on here except my signature and stamp, which won't actually happen until I'm sitting with the buyer. And then affidavit of consideration and disbursement. This is a Maryland thing. You probably won't see this unless you luck into a Maryland closing. This one just says that I swear that the money for this transaction is legit. It is true and bona fide. So unless you are a title company filling this out, you as the notary will not have to fill this out, because the signers can't attest to this. So this would be blank in this case. HOA rider, planned unit development rider. So this is just a 2-pager, nothing to prep. As I present it to the buyer, hey, this just says that there is an HOA. Please follow the rules and pay their fees. That makes the lender happy. Next is the loan application. Now on page 1 of the loan application, there is an initial spot. I'm going to have them initial. If there's 2 borrowers, I'll have them each initial their own page. You'll see this at the top of the page 1. And then there's an acknowledgments page, in this case on page 6. They're going to sign and date that. There's nothing for me to prep there. And I just let them know that, yep, this is your loan app. And I'm actually going to do a video on this exact packet, how I present it, literally. So I'm not going to go too deep into it here, because I'm going to go into that on another video. But just as far as prep, what I'm doing. So loan application. Addendum to the loan application, just a signature and date. There is a yes or no box. In this case, it's asking about homestead. Can anyone other than you claim a homestead interest in the property that will secure repayment of the loan? They're going to check yes or no. Usually, in this case, it would be no. That way the loan can be completed. Next, errors and omissions agreement. It's a signature and date, pretty straightforward. The notarization is on the second page. So again, prep that, everything but your signature and stamp. That way you are good to go at the closing. And all this does, it just makes it a much smoother closing when I am with the signers, because there's no prep for me. Other than checking their IDs at the beginning, that's about it. First lien letter, this is actually for the title company. We can ignore that. First payment letter, in this case, there's no signature and date. Most of the time there will be. This lender, Citizens Bank, doesn't have one on theirs. First time homebuyer affidavit. We had one in the title documents. We have it in the loan documents. Same thing. I'm just going to again prep the certificate, the notary acknowledgement, and that way I'm good to go. And this one is just a signature and date for the buyer. Limited power of attorney to correct documents, LPOA. Signature and dates on page 2. Again, I'm prepping the certificate. Yep, County of Hartford, State of Maryland, initial that correction. Again, please, initial all your corrections. Always recommend taking good training from the NNA on the basics for your state. Name affidavit. This one, in this case, the borrower has 2 signatures to sign, their first and last name, and their first, middle, and last name, or their full name. And then on page 2 is my jurat to fill out. Perfect, done and done. Today's date, very good. Cool. Borrower certification and authorization. Yep, that one's signature and dates. Occupancy affidavit, signature and date with the jurat on the second page. There we go. Notice concerning private mortgage insurance. There's no signature and date. I just let them know that the automatic termination of their mortgage insurance falls off automatically. They don't have to do anything once they get to 78% loan to value. They could request to be removed earlier, especially if they've made extra payments to the principal or if the value of the home has gone up. That way they can get rid of paying that extra money every month, the PMI part of their monthly payment, if that's the case. And the PMI is just there in case they put less than 20% down. That way the lender feels better and more comfortable. It's their way of de-risking the loan by getting that extra money from them every single month. Choice of insurance notice, again, just letting the buyer know that they can choose their homeowner's insurance, and they can choose a provider. Acknowledgement of receipt of copy of appraisal, signature and date here, just says they got a copy of the appraisal. ID affidavit, this is basically the Patriot Act version for this particular lender. Obviously, I'm going to fill out my driver's license, the buyer's license info at the top. They'll sign a date. And then again, I'm filling this out, sworn and subscribed before me on today's date, April 18th, 2024, 4/18/2024 by the buyer, their name, and then notary, public name, printing, and my commission expires in person. So I'll sign and stamp that at closing. Closing attorney's fee certification. In this case, this version is for the title company. Sometimes you'll see a version for the buyer to sign as well. I'll cover that more in depth in the next video. Maryland lender and originator disclosures. This one confuses some notaries because there's a lot of signature and date spots and notarization blocks. This is just for the lender, so you can skip that. And again, that's called the Maryland lender and originator disclosures. Homeowners insurance. Just reminding the buyer they have to have it while they have the loan, signature and date. Escrow account disclosure form. This one, again, this lender signature and date is going to be on page 2. Escrow account notice, nothing to sign, kind of reiterating what we just saw on the prior page. Actually, yep, there is a signature and date spot on page 2. Borrower authorization for counseling, that's if they get behind on their payments. Signature and date right here, pretty straightforward, almost done. Social Security Administration document, this one, I just had them verify that their social is correct in the top right corner and that they are signing and dating right here in the middle. Again, nothing to prep. 4506C, this one is to get a copy of the tax returns. As far as this one, again, the big one is just make sure you hit that checkbox in the bottom left there. And again, this will be easier to see on the other video I'm going to do. As far as the document, they're signing and dating. Again, on this one, if it's just the single borrower's name, not the spouse on here, if you're in front of 2 people, you're only having the person's name that's on here sign. If the spouse is in the room, but they're not on this document, they're not signing this. They don't need the extra signature and date. Don't let them sign it. But usually they'll assume that both people are signing if both people are there. Not necessarily. Sometimes they'll split their names. Oftentimes, if it's 2 borrowers, you actually see 3 of them, one for each individual borrower, and then one for both of them. Consent to these for tax return information, signature and date, very straightforward. Privacy policy from Citizens Bank, the lender. In this case, there is nothing for them to sign. I usually just get them to initial the bottom of it, that they have read it. I just draw in initials and a line, and then the borrower will initial. Acknowledgement, we may contact you by telephone. This one's pretty straightforward, signature and date. Some of these you'll have an opt-out. In this case, there's no opt-out. Amortization schedule, it's 12 pages. Most of the time, there will be a signature and date right here at the end. In this case, not so much for the buyer. This one just talks about Citizens Bank, credit card offers, W-9. This one, I am just verifying their social is correct, and then they're signing and dating right in the center. Nothing to prep. Now, the other subsequent 4 pages of instructions, again, you could just paperclip that right here, and that way you know buyers don't need to see it. They don't need to read it, because I guarantee if you hand them the W-9, all 6 pages or 5 pages, they're going to sign and date, and then they're going to try to start reading the next 4 or 5 pages, which is not for them. It's just instructions on the W-9 form itself. So I generally wouldn't hand that to them in the first place. Property condition certificate. This one's signature and date, just saying that the buyer is cool with the condition of the property, holding the lender harmless. That way if things start falling apart in a year, they don't blame the lender. Rate lock agreement. In this case, they locked in their rate at 6.375 on April 3rd. Signature and date right on page 2. This one, Citizen Bank mobile app information. Again, that's for the buyer. Lets them know how to pay their mortgage. This one's instructions for the title company, which is a couple pages. And the last couple pages are homeowner's insurance declaration page. Nothing they have to sign, but you'll typically see that. Also, you may see some statement of information. So you may see at the very end of the lender packet some, pretty much blank pages other than like 2 sentences typed in. They may be statement of informations that the buyer emailed in. The lender had a question. Hey, it looked like you used to live at this address. Can you email us a statement of information about, why you moved or whatever? So during that lending process, the buyer will sometimes have to email in explaining certain things about their credit history so the lender feels more comfortable. And at the closing, since they've emailed in, they want for the file that the buyer signs and dates those statement of information. And they're just going to look like a Word document with a couple of sentences, maybe a paragraph from the buyer, and their printed name. But the lender does want those signed and dated. So that will come with experience. But if you're like, why is this in here? It's in there to get it signed. When in doubt, you can get it signed. If you didn't need to get it signed, they can always print a blank one. You do want to err on the side of getting it signed versus not. But as far as prep, there's not much in this case. I'm keeping the closing disclosure and Alta at the top, along with the FedEx label, put notes on it, title documents, and then all the lender documents. That way, when I'm scanning it back in, when I'm done, all I have to do is take this closing disclosure that the buyer signed right here, and then put that back in the lender documents where I got it. Should be right toward the beginning, right after the instructions and before the note, right there. Obviously take the paperclip out and any staples, and then I am ready to scan back to my hiring party or back to the title company, and I'm good to go. And obviously at the end of the transaction, you do, of course, always please double check your work. One hack is to double check your work backwards. So what I mean by that is after everything has been signed, most notaries will start again from the beginning and say, hey, great, congratulations. Give me like 5 minutes. I'm just double checking to make sure we didn't miss any signatures. Don't go anywhere. And they'll start going back through everything. But you're more apt to miss something. So if you go backwards, this way, your brain is not used to this order. So you're more likely to catch something that is missed than the other way around. And that's just one easy hack to help reduce your errors that will come from missed signatures and dates. So I hope this helps. As far as prep, there's not much to do because you're printing a second set. The second set of documents is in your manila envelope. Physically, I just hand that to them, or at the very end of the transaction, after we're done, I'll hand that to them, because often what will happen is if you hand this to them at the beginning, they may open it and try to start going through it, or some people will try to go through it like page by page with you. That's such a huge time suck. You don't want to do that. So just let them know at the beginning, hey, I've got a copy of your documents, unsigned. I'm going to hand this to you at the end so you have it. Title company will probably email you signed documents in their portal, which is what most title companies do nowadays. And as far as prep, all I'm doing is making sure I have the Alta CD at the top with the FedEx label, and then all the notary certificates. I want them prepped. That way there's less time at the table. All right, so I hope this has helped show you what goes into prepping. For me, not a ton involved. I want the key documents at the top and all my notary certificates prepped so I have less time at the table. The other thing I will typically do is I will grab my phone, which is filming right now, so I can't show it to you, but I will also, as I am prepping the documents, I will have a little notepad, and all I'm doing is writing down at each notarization, owner occupancy affidavit, 2 pages, deed of trust, 23 pages, name affidavit, 2 pages. And I'm writing down all the notarizations because I have an electronic journal, notariact.com, and I'm creating a draft entry as I'm driving to that signing. But in the meantime, let's say I'm prepping this the night before. I have my list of, let's say, 10 notarizations, and I literally just take that, put that on top, binder clip it, borrower's copy. In my case, I have clear folders. I just get these from Amazon. As they get beat up, I reorder them. And I just take my both copies with my notes. I drop that in my notary bag. So as I'm driving to the appointment, I can pull this out on the passenger seat, open it up, take the sticky pad, And now I have my notarization notes, so I can pull up Notary Act when I'm at a stoplight or multiple stoplights in the way, or while I'm sitting outside their appointment 10 minutes early, and entering in that draft entry. Hey, I'm here with Mr. and Mrs. Signer at this location, and these are the 10 different notarizations I'm doing. That way, when I go into the signing, introduce myself, get their IDs, I scan the back of the IDs, it scans the barcode, pulls all their information in. They sign my journal electronically on my phone once, even though I'm doing many notarizations. And then I'll save that entry, and that's my journal. It's electronic. I don't have to store a physical copy. And again, that's notaryact.com. It's available to use. Most states have approved it. I think like 40 some states. And most of the states, if you're watching this, will have approved and be cool with Notary Act. If not, maybe there's another electronic journal that is approved. If not, paper journals there. But the nice thing is I can prep that draft entry, and that way, if I get there and for some reason it doesn't close, I can just delete it. I don't have to line through a whole bunch of stuff in paper journal and make notes about why I had to cross everything out. So super convenient. But as far as what I do to prep, that's literally it. My notarization notes on top of the documents, binder clipped, their copy right into my notary bag, and I'm good to go. So I hope this has added tremendous value to you in some way. If you like it, please share the video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It would help us out tremendously, because all we do is put out great notary content every single week to add value to you, put more money in your pocket, and hopefully teach you how to spend more time with your family because you have gone direct and you've gotten higher paying appointments. You're not just working with signing services, even though there's nothing wrong with that. I own a signing service, but part of the progression, hopefully you're progressing on. Now, if you are a notary that has direct clients, perfect segue, we offer 10% commissions every single month to notaries that refer their title client to us to help them with their out-of-state closings that you can't personally do because you're not commissioned in all 50 states. But that's where we come in. We can cover closings throughout the country or throughout the world using remote online notarization as well. So if your clients need help with that because they're getting inconsistent service, all you do is email them and say, hey, CC me, Brad at superlativesignings.com, and let them know, hey, Brad and his team would be more than happy to assist you with this bilingual closing, out-of-state closing, wrong closing, whatever it is you can't cover. We're happy to step in and pay you 10% of whatever they send our way, direct deposit every month. Many notaries take advantage, so hopefully you will too. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, congratulations. You are what I like to call the 1%, the diehards like me who just watch YouTube videos all the way to the end. And I appreciate you sticking around. Again, thank you so much for helping grow the channel. I appreciate you. Happy signing. And until the next time, peace.